1980s. The dreary, politicized poetry of the Mao years was giving way to an efflorescence of new genres, styles, and themes. When Tahir published his first poem, while still in high school, he was joining a literary scene very much in ferment. An excellent student, Tahir moved to Beijing for college. Coming from the Uyghur-speaking world of Kashgar, Tahir now strove to master Mandarin, working through volumes of Chinese avant-garde poetry alongside Chinese translations of Freud. Before long, he was reading widely in Western literature. For a time, the Chinese edition of Wallace Stevens' selected poems rarely left his side. It was a heady time as he and other Uyghur students in Beijing formed groups to discuss their reading and push forward in their own literary efforts. It was also a tumultuous period in China's capital. A new generation, unwilling to accept the tepid pace of reform, was increasingly demanding democratic rights and an end to corruption. As a sophomore, Tahir helped organize hunger strikes and marches by Uyghur students in the weeks leading up to the 1989 Tiananmen protests. While the student movement was ultimately crushed by Beijing's tanks, Tahir's interest in politics persisted. Following college, Tahir worked for a time in Beijing before taking a position teaching Mandarin in Urumqi, capital of the Uyghur region. All the while, he continued writing poetry, much of it in a modernist vein, some of it dealing with subjects previously taboo in Uyghur literature. One much-discussed 1994 poem touched on marijuana, masturbation, and a nation turned into a drunkard. Tahir increasingly gained a reputation in avant-garde circles as a talented young poet. In 1996, the political realities of Uyghur life in China intruded. Having left Urumqi with the hope of studying abroad, Tahir was arrested at the border while attempting to leave China. After confessing under torture to spurious charges of intent to expose state secrets, Tahir was imprisoned for nearly 3 years. Conditions were harsh, and his weight fell below 100 pounds. After his release in late 1998, Tahir was faced with beginning his life again, now with a black mark against his name in the party archive. The following year, he began working in film production and was soon directing independent films. By the early 2000s, Tahir had established himself as a significant and highly original director, best known for his path-breaking drama, The Moon is a Witness. His poetic work continued apace, as did his vast and varied reading. It was a remarkable second act for a man who had emerged from a labor camp only a few years before, and it unfolded against a backdrop of deteriorating political conditions and ethnic relations in the Uyghur region. Over the course of the 2000s, the Chinese government largely eliminated the Uyghur language education system and began forcing Uyghur children into Chinese language boarding schools. Discrimination against Uyghurs by members of China's Han majority grew pervasive. Uyghurs seeking jobs were often told outright by potential employers that we don't need minorities. Citing the unemployment problem created in part by its own policies, the government began pressuring Uyghurs to take low-wage jobs elsewhere in China, where they lived in crowded dormitories under strict supervision, surrounded by an unfamiliar and often unwelcoming society. Year after year, Uyghur resentment festered, with no outlet for expression in the tightly controlled media. Finally, in mid-2009, after Han employees at a toy factory in eastern China lynched Uyghur colleagues following unfounded rumors of rape, Urumqi exploded in successive waves of violence between Uyghurs and Han. The death toll climbed into the hundreds as buses burned, shop windows were smashed, and passers-by were bludgeoned to death in the streets. In September, amid mass protests against the region's party secretary, Tahir was crossing a crowded street when several Han protesters